Horror Minute is rated R. The Rocky Horror Picture Show is also rated R. We're going to spend this time discussing the movie in gory detail, and along the road we will talk about some adult content and use some of our favorite swear words.
Sildenafil, Vardenafil, Teladafil, Avenafil.
Consider yourselves warned. Welcome to Rocky Horror Minute, the podcast where we talk about the Rocky Horror Picture Show in excruciating detail, 1 minute at a time. I'm one of your hosts, Leandra.
And I'm your other host, Kelly.
And we are joined again today by our special guest, Larry Wiesel. He is the co-author of The Rocky Horror Treasury, a tribute to the ultimate cult classic with Sal Piro, and the Transylvanian Extraordinaire on the Blu-ray Shadowcast. He also runs RockyHorror.com and the official Rocky Horror Picture Show fan club on Facebook.
That's me.
And Larry, thank you so much for joining us again for Minute 30.
I'm happy to be back. I feel like I was away for so long.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a full minute, so I can't wait to hear of your travels in the last 60 seconds. But yeah, today we're discussing Minute 30 of the Rocky Horror Picture Show, which begins with the elevator going up with Riff Raff, Magenta, Columbia, Brad, and Janet inside. You see a scene of the room that we discussed several minutes ago with the pineapple-shaped dildos or dildo-shaped pineapples, which are these weird tchotchkes that look somewhere in between dildos and pineapples. And then you see a couple of dark rooms, and Janet says to Magenta, is he your husband? And Columbia laughs delightedly, and Riff Raff chimes in, the master is not yet married, nor do I expect he ever will be. We are simply his servants. Janet says, oh. And then they arrive at this pristine pink lab. Frank has had a costume change. He's looking ravishing in a weird green lab dress, pearl necklace, and his dress has a pink triangle on it, or I guess it's red, right? It's like a pink triangle reference, although it's right side up, and it's in that place on the left breast. And the Transylvanians are in the lab. They're up on a raised platform looking down into the main area. There's statues, and Janet steps out of the elevator, then Brad, then the servants, and Brad and Janet kind of just spin around looking up, and from their point of view, you get a shot of kind of spinning around the lab, and you get a 360 of it. That's pretty much the minute. The last thing that happens is Riff walks over to Frank and gives him a drink of some type, and then you see Brad and Janet grab each other's hand.
Well, we know from last minute that drink is a very specific type of champagne.
So, yes, but it is so clearly not champagne in that glass.
I mean, in real life, you're probably right.
But you get a close enough shot of it that it's so clearly not champagne, which is why I said a drink of some type.
It could be. It's not bubbling, right?
It's not bubbling. It's not particularly.
It could have just been on the set, while they were filming for quite some time and had lost all its bubbles.
That's true. It's very pale champagne if it is champagne indeed.
So before we get into the lab, what do we think of this minute?
It's kind of a slow burn this minute, but I think the lab scene reveal is done really well.
I think the elevator conversation really shows just how awkward it is between, Janet just trying to make small talk with these people in this elevator is very, very strange, and Riff just being like, yeah, the master is not yet married.
Yeah, well, and also it's I'm clearly his maid. I'm dressed as a maid, and you've seen me cleaning things, so it's weird that you would assume he was my husband.
Yeah, but I mean, she could have been talking to Columbia. She could have been talking to Riff Raff.
I actually looked, and she's Like, I looked closely, and she was turned around looking at Magenta when she said that.
Specifically Magenta at that point.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right.
So yeah, I don't know how dumb
she
she is. This is why I play Janet, because she's just a classic bimbo.
Hey, she's trying to make sense of it all.
Yeah.
You know, she comes into this world and is seeing that everything is topsy-turvy. But I think this is the point where Janet starts to kind of accept her fate and is like, okay, I'm in for this as well. And that's why she giggles when, you know, she is talking to Frank. I think her making small talk in the elevator is very much like, okay, I'm you know, in for a penny, in for a pound. So
that's true. You see her, that's another good characterization moment for her as she's starting to come around.
Brad, on the other hand, he is now where Janet was a couple of minutes before. He is very stiff and definitely not super thrilled to be in his underwear.
No, again, I can't understand why Brad at this point would want to have anything to do with these people after they took off his clothes, you know, and are kind of bossing him around. And I think that he's not used to being in the back seat in his life as, you know, a man in the 60s and 70s would have been. I think in the Midwest, I think he would have been the very Eisenhower Republican. You know, that scene where he does take off his glasses and acts forceful, I think that might be where he's kind of showing himself as like, hey, I'm in charge here. And I think that's what's going through his head right now is like, wait a minute, how am I suddenly not in charge? And it's like, what the hell is going on? Where's this phone?
And he uses his time in the elevator to put his soaking wet shoes back on. So it's got to smell great in that elevator at this point.
Yeah, he doesn't have the elevator. He doesn't have the shoes in his hand in the elevator, does he?
No.
So it must have been like as soon as he got in that elevator, Riff closes the door and, you know, he's drops that champagne bottle. And that's when Brad was putting his shoes back on.
In the history of awkward elevator rides, I think that this one is certainly one of the funniest to me because I think that I'm kind of in the camp of Columbia Magenta Brad of don't talk to people in the elevator unless you like know them. And if somebody that I didn't know, like Janet, tried to ask me a question, I would, just because I'm an introvert who doesn't really like people or interacting with people unprepared, I would definitely falter.
The commentary with Richard O'Brien and Patricia Quinn revealed some very interesting set information about this minute. So in the castle, apparently the elevator only went up to the first floor with a hydraulic lever. Everything after that was cinema magic. But the lab scene, it takes place in a pit, which is also where the swimming pool was.
Right.
Yeah.
There was no obviously the lab scene was all done on a set and the elevator was not part of the lab, right?
Yeah.
When we initially put that set together. So there's no real floor underneath it. So it goes up from the you see it go up from the floor. But basically what they all did was they got into the elevator in the lab. The elevator went down, then camera started rolling and it went back up as if to imply that it was actually going up into the lab again.
Exactly.
It is movie magic. There was no real lab above the ballroom. In
right.
Yeah, that lab lives in Bray Studios, or I guess lived.
So yeah, it's like down in a tank. But I thought it was really interesting that that's also where the swimming pool is at the end of the movie. Richard O'Brien talked about how they had to get all of the lab scene stuff filmed so they could tear it down and get the swimming pool things ready. So that's interesting. That explains some things, I guess, like the drain on the floor and stuff.
I think the drain goes after the idea that, you know, he was kind of styling it as if it would be some sort of ultimately a little bit like a bathroom, right? Like it had pink tile all over the wall in the lab. The tile was all, I guess you see it at the beginning of this minute, was all slightly different shades of pink. Nothing was exactly the right. It wasn't like a uniform shade of pink. It was meant to make you feel a little bit off. And the drain in the floor would be if when the tank empties out, you know, that the water has to go somewhere. So that's what that drain would be for. And the idea was, I guess, to give it a very bath type of feel. Like even the Starship Honeycomb that we all call it, was a shower head. And someday, when I own my giant mansion in my dreams, I will have my very own Rocky Horror styled bathroom with slightly off pink tiles and a bathtub shaped like the tank and a shower head shaped like the like the Starship Honeycomb. A man can dream, can't he?
Yeah,
I can see this dream, and I believe in you, Larry. I believe.
Only there was a movie that could tell me I shouldn't just dream it, but actually make this happen.
Yeah, I wish that there was some sort of quote like,
Yeah.
don't sleep about it and think about it, but go out and do the thing.
Oh well,
I think it's nice.
It'll never happen, I suppose.
Yeah.
We actually had a discussion about the clock, because I was amazed that sold for only £35,000 when it sold. I value that much more highly. If I were a rich eccentric,
the guy tried to sell it to the people who were making the remake. He wouldn't let them use it unless they bought it outright, and they wanted quite a bit of money for it, and way more than it had initially sold for. They ended up just making a replica for the remake, but it was a pretty spot-on replica.
One day when I have all of the money in the world, I'm going to track down that person and just give them money until they give me the coffin. Because
that would be a nice thing. I had an opportunity to buy the Floor Show Janet statue, but the guy wanted way more money than I could possibly ever have in my lifetime.
Really?
Yeah, and honestly, way more than it's actually worth. Like, even from a movie prop collecting perspective, I can't imagine someone paying it. It would be the kind of money he wanted is the kind of money that someone would have for buying Darth Vader, like the suit, like the whole Darth Vader.
Oh, wow.
Like, that's what he thought this thing was worth, which maybe to someone it is, but I don't have that kind of money to buy the Janet statue. And it was also in terrible condition. I'm sure you can get into that when you cover that minute, but the condition that the statue is in these days is not, this pristine statue that came out of the studio. It had been repainted with this ridiculous harlequin kind of costume, and it looked like it was something out of a Mardi Gras float. It's really ridiculous looking these days.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah.
Just going back in time just a small bit, before we get into the lab, I want to talk about some of the things in the room that the elevator is housed in. I know, Kelly, that you've referred to the pineapple-shaped dildos, dildo-shaped pineapples. I think more accurately, at least based on what I could see, they look like they're flame-shaped electric lights.
Yeah, I doubt they were meant to be pineapple-shaped dildos, so that might be what they were going for.
And then there's all the random Clash of the Titans statues that are in the case behind them, in the curio case.
And then to the far right, I can't tell what it is because for the life of me, I don't remember seeing this from any other angle. There's some sort of triffid. There's some foliage that's just kind of growing, and it's maybe ivy. I have no idea for sure. But
yeah, it seems just like some random plant.
Yeah, and I don't remember seeing it before just that moment. And I looked back and I couldn't quickly find it, at least.
Yeah, that seems to me that's the sort of thing that was placed there on purpose. Also, if you look at the statues collection on the left, the one on top, is that just a vase on the top of the statue? It just seems odd to put something way up on that top shelf there.
But would it be as odd as any of the other things? Like in the time warp, there's right behind people a statue with a sword, and on top of the sword is a taxidermied bird of some sort. And
does this bird belong to you?
It's one of many.
Yeah.
But I don't find that any of the things in here really surprise me anymore, because I kind of came into this thinking, oh, well, all this is going to make sense somehow. And I think that everything that unites it is the fact that it doesn't quite make sense. And the fact that I guess this is supposed to give an impression that these are not humans. These are people pretending to be human.
They just don't quite get it. I think that's the idea he was going for was... exactly. It's like they saw what rich humans would do, and humans with some sort of notoriety, and if you were extravagant, this is what you would have in your house. So they tried to replicate that and just didn't hit the mark.
That was really the major thing that I noticed from the elevator room. We do see that the doors to, I'm guessing, the Time Warp Ballroom are now closed, because I don't think that is the front door that we're looking at now. And I don't remember there being a curtain kind of right after the front door, but I do know that that was something that they had on the way into the Time Warp Ballroom.
Yeah, that is the door to the Time Warp Ballroom. And as I was saying before, in Oakley Court, that ballroom, there's a smaller version of that ballroom in Oakley Court, and that those doors do go into that room.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of virtual walkthroughs of it, and I go, oh, this is pretty cool. And I know that we've talked about the elevator before, but I'm guessing that when they have the footage of over top of the elevator as it's going up, that probably is done by a camera being on the second floor landing. And I love that the elevator itself is incredibly dusty.
Looks like that elevator has been there for quite some time.
Yeah.
Don't know if it actually had been there for quite some time, but
I know it's not there anymore.
It's not there anymore now.
Yeah.
I remember. I've been to the castle a few times. It's a hotel now, if you haven't heard.
What? I had no idea. Larry, are you joking?
No, seriously.
I can only hope somebody sends me a link to the hotel's website.
But so I went there for the Transylvania 99 convention. It was very fun to go in and see what was there and what wasn't there. And, of course, they still have the banister, because you need a banister for a flight of stairs, but it's not the original banister. But it was also very interesting to see the room and, what was that they had taken the pattern of the ballroom from that side room, and that they had the room where the dinner scene happened, is still being used as a room for tea. And the doors are all still there, and you can still see the little flourishes around the castle that were there back then.
Yeah, I desperately want to go there one day, even if just to take a picture with Sam the Eagle in bondage at the front door. I would just absolutely love that.
And now for a commercial break.
Hi, I'm Aaron.
I'm John.
And I'm Nikki. We host Rocky Talkie Podcast, a weekly program where we talk about worldwide Rocky Horror related news and current events from the shadowcasting community.
We cover big global news stories about the movie, the play, the actors, and the shadowcasters.
We also fill you in on all the cool Rocky related projects that individual casts and shadowcasters are working on.
We learn a lot about the history of the movie and the community. It's a good time. We just did an episode all about the pornos. Ooh.
If you want to learn more about Rocky in the news and catch up on what's going on with other community members, visit our website, rockytalkiepodcast.com.
And if you've got some news to share, send us an email at rockytalkiepodcast@gmail.com.
Our episodes drop Thursdays on SoundCloud, iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. So come check us out and visit us on all social media at Rocky Talkie Podcast.
We'll see you next Thursday. Snoogans.
You said see you next Thursday.
We actually got a piece of fan mail, for lack of better phrasing, from somebody very recently who said, I watched this for the first time on Hulu because of the pandemic, and I have so many questions, and I listened to Rocky Horror Minute for the details, but I still need to know these things. And hopefully by the time we release this, we'll have responded to that. But if not, I'm very sorry, Ren. List.
We responded. We're trying to find the answers to all the questions because some of them are not things we necessarily know.
Yeah, but it's very exciting. This is somebody that hopefully once the pandemic clears up, they'll be able to go to their local Rocky Horror showing and really be able to experience the full deal. I do like that the way that they convey that they're going to definitely real part of the same castle and not a set at Bray Studios at all, is that there's a shot of the camera filming from inside the elevator, and then there's this black screen, like we're going through a floor, I guess. And through that, some of the audio that I think is actually really well executed in this is the creaking of the elevator.
Yeah, and then, like you said, there's 4 or 5 seconds of blackness, which is odd, and then suddenly they're coming up through the lab. I think you're right. The sound that they have with of the elevator just going up, and it really does kind of put you there. It did seem. I do kind of wonder if they thought of this. How far in advance they thought of that. Oh, we're going to need that shot, but it does make a lot of sense to watch the elevator coming up because it was originally, there is no elevator there. They're coming up from that pit. Yeah, I wonder what they got inside the pit before they actually get to the lab scene, to the lab floor. Unfortunately,
the world will never know. Unless you have some behind-the-scenes pictures of inside the pit. I wouldn't be surprised if you...
don't have anything. I do have photos of a couple of the cameramen filming, and I think they're in the elevator shaft, but I'm not 100% sure where they were, whether it was the elevator shaft in the hotel or whether it was from the pit. I'm imagining it was from the hotel.
So when we do get into the lab, though, Kelly, I know you've already said this. We see that it's dazzlingly clean, just complete juxtaposition with the kind of decrepit way that Oakley Court was styled, if you can call it styling. But everything is just bright. There's light everywhere, and everything looks sterile, which makes sense because we're supposed to be in a lab environment.
There's a lot of times in the movie where you can tell that the direction from Jim Sharman was, all right, I want you to stand perfectly still, and this is one of them where they told Tim Curry, I want you to hold this pair of gloves and not move at all. So the camera then, the camera shows the elevator opening, and then it switches to over the shoulder from Tim Curry's point of view, Brad and Janet getting out of the elevator, and it shows them looking around the laboratory, at everything that's there. And it's like the same thing with the Transylvanians up on the platform and balcony. They're just kind of standing there waiting and not moving, just the same way that Tim Curry was standing there as Brad and Janet gawk at them. I think that's an interesting direction that he gave, was just, all right, don't move for this scene. And we're going to film around you. He does that a couple of times throughout the movie where he's just like, don't move, nobody move.
I think that at least for Frank in this scene, getting that initial tableau of him just kind of waiting in a perfect pose kind of gives the impression that Frank is in charge. People are going to come to him. Before I forget, which is something that I often do, in a previous minute, we talked about how Fran Fullenwider was wearing a little green hat. And in this scene, she is no longer, she changes hat, she changes hair, and I find that to be incredibly rude of her. And she's not the only Transylvanian that switches things around, but that was the one that I specifically called out in previous minutes. We will talk in larger detail about the Transylvanians, as we said before, but that just drove me batty when I was looking at that. I was going to be the world's greatest Fran Fullenwider cosplayer at one point, and I was like, okay, so her costume looks different from scene to scene. Why?
I've been saying this a lot, but Polaroids would have fixed a lot of these problems.
Well, they did. They took these. John Jay was the set photographer who took a ton of these photos, and they do really have like a minute by minute of everything that happens, but there are just going to be some details that just get a little bit lost here and there. Oh, right. And I guess you're right. Polaroids would have been better if at the time they were able to to have them instantly sent out, right? Like right as soon as it happened, you took a picture and moved on. But there definitely were some Polaroid cameras on the set. In that one, I own some of the Polaroids. But two, I have photos of, I think even of Fran Fullenwider, of, I think it was either Lou Adler or Michael White taking a picture of Fran Fullenwider.
Oh, that's great. I did not. I've joked that a Polaroid camera probably wasn't in the budget, but I guess it was.
Michael White was notorious for his Polaroids. So I bought Michael White's collection of papers and everything from Rocky Horror, but I don't have his Polaroids, which would be fantastic. But he did take a lot of Polaroids just in life in general, from being, the man about town that he was. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Polaroid camera that you saw on the set, that I have that picture of, was actually Michael White's. I don't know if they had one there for continuity, but it would stand to reason that they would have one there for continuity if that's just was the thing in the 70s, right?
Well, if they did, it clearly didn't have film.
Yeah, or like a hat is a pretty big detail. Something like the Transylvanian I usually dress up as is Peggy Ledger, and her costume changes from scene to scene, but it's like pins and rings. What hat somebody's wearing should remain consistent from scene to scene.
You're talking about a movie where they literally changed out one of the Transylvanians.
That's true. Yeah, no, you're right.
So I don't know how much they necessarily noticed a hat. If anything in this movie changed, the butterfly effect would have meant that it wouldn't be talked about on a podcast 45 years later. So
it's true.
That's probably true.
And when I discovered that, I actually got into a small fight with somebody who also wanted to do a good job with Fran Fullenwider costuming. And I said, no, I swear to you, she's not actually wearing a green hat in the lab. And they're like, no, you're wrong. You're just wrong. I'm like, please just look. Mm-hmm. I'm not making this up.
It is the photo that I'm looking at. The photo now it's actually of Lou Adler taking a picture of Fran Fullenwider with a Polaroid camera. And then the next shot I have is Michael White and Susan Sarandon looking at the Polaroids that Lou Adler has in his hands.
Just moving on to a couple of costume pieces. We see Frank waiting in what as a small child who was watching this on her dad's VHS, I always assumed that this was Frank in like a green high-necked dress. And when I discovered at a much older age that it was an operator in a lab gown, I was like, oh, wow, that's super weird. That's super cool. And I've said multiple times on this show that I was not a super intelligent child. So I don't know that other people would have made that mistake. But it does very much look like a severe, almost a Joan Crawford sort of look. Just holding the hands in place and kind of minimizing the footprint that Frank-N-Furter is taking in the room, but still being a focal point. It's a very feminine sort of look.
Yeah, and then as you get closer, you see, the details on the gown is that there is blood on it, there's rips on it. It's not this 100% pristine look that he had when he was standing there so stoically as the camera panned up on him. You also notice that Frank is wearing an anklet as the camera pans up and you see his ankle, his right ankle.
As you're lecherously looking at his ankles, if you look a little bit lower, you see that he's now wearing black heels because he had time to change his shoes as well.
Right, now they have the slightly different heels on these shoes.
Yeah.
So it's always amusing the Shadowcasters that have the white slip cover for their heels.
One final thing about Frank's costuming, and Kelly, I know that you touched on this a little bit, is that red triangle on the left breast pocket area.
Yeah, it's a nod to the Holocaust and a nod to Nazi imagery. At least that's what we've been led to believe all these years, although it's slightly different than the pink triangle that was actually used in World War II. But yeah, there are lots and lots of little nods to Nazi imagery in the movie, and that is one of them.
Yeah, I just wanted to see what you guys thought about why reference the Holocaust at this moment.
I don't know, man. They throw in lots of stuff like that all over the place.
Like, is it meant to be like humorous?
No, I think it was they needed a way to convey, that Frank may have witnessed the atrocities of what happened to homosexuals during the Holocaust, and again, just being in that same way that he didn't quite get everything else. He didn't quite get that you're not supposed to wear this as just look at me, as my outfit that I'm wearing out. So I think that might have been where that came from.
Yeah, I had a thought, and I have no idea if this is true because I honestly don't know. But I had a thought that it may have just been sort of a symbol that was reclaimed in some ways at the time by the gay community. But I don't really know the history of what happened with the pink triangle post-Holocaust, so I don't know. It's definitely like kind of tonally weird,
Yeah, I also don't know, how well known it was, and on the in the zeitgeist of the pink triangle being used to identify homosexuals in the Holocaust. I know that the yellow star was a lot more in the zeitgeist to, for that. So I don't know what that exactly. I don't know enough about Nazi imagery to really know the details of the pink triangle.
Well, if there's something that you don't want to be an expert on, that's
That's definitely on that list. The final thing that I wanted to talk about in this are a couple of architectural things that I see. And first off is the back of the elevator, that back wall of it has this beautiful Art Deco design in the iron rails, for lack of better words.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, I can't imagine that was a sort of thing that was done on purpose. I think that they found this elevator and were like, oh, we need to use this. It's what we had on hand.
And then there's something else that I noticed about this, and it's the fact that there are cords everywhere and they're not taped down, and these are tripping hazards.
So where do you see these cords is when the camera pans around to show you what Brad and Janet are looking at in the lab. You see the cords on the floor.
Yeah, so they're over on the kind of raised stage. You see them just kind of going from one point to another. They're not taped down or anything. They're not tunnel taped or anything at all that would convey that these were intentionally placed there and safely placed there. Something that I would insist happens now.
Okay, I know you see the so on that little raised stage on the stairs, you mean there's like a random cord going from the microphone to the speakers.
Yeah.
Okay, I get what you're saying. This is also where you notice the writing on the wall in the lab, behind the lab wall, or just to the left of the sonic transducer wall. You don't really get a great look at it in the movie, I don't think, at any one point, but there's a behind the scenes photo that shows exactly what's on that wall.
I think that you get a slightly better view of it in different moments in the movie, but you are right that there's no like zoom in of the kind of random chemistry symbols. And I know that there's also a grocery list written on in there too. There's just a lot of fun stuff that they added in that I don't think that they were planning for a movie by minute podcast to be taken it apart bit by bit. But
no, I mean, the whole movie is filled. I mean, the narrator's book, the criminologist Denton Affair book, is filled with things like that. So
yeah,
I'm sure that no one at any point thought, 45 years later, someone's going to analyze this. And sure enough, here we are. I think that they thought it would be a fun movie to make, and Brian Thompson decided to sneak little things in here wherever he could. Also want to mention Terry Ackland Snow. He's not getting enough credit here. It wasn't just Brian Thompson that put this together. It was the two of them that really kind of got the set design and all the little intricate details.
Now, was he credited? I don't recall.
Yeah, he's in there.
Okay. I definitely went through all of the credits and found some interesting stuff, but I don't think I was aware of that.
And I think
very cool.
Recently there might even be a recent video on YouTube with him and see if I can find it. Terry Ackland Snow did a video with someone else on YouTube. Might have been Peter Suchitsky. I honestly can't remember. But it was called The Cinematography of Rocky Horror, of the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Ooh.
So keep an eye out for that.
As I said, I love the first moment where you see the lab scene in 360 like that from Brad and Janet's point of view. You get a real sense for that strange set.
They didn't try and really hide any of the smaller set pieces that come up in subsequent minutes. Like, I wasn't aware that that there were two large things that are covered in kind of a red satiny sheet just behind the elevator, and I don't think that many people really focus on that, so it still becomes a surprise to them, even after they've watched it maybe 3 or 4 times. But it's hiding in plain sight.
Yeah, the weight set and the pommel horse are both there behind the elevator. The other thing that's interesting to notice about the elevator is that the same railing that's used around the balcony is also behind the elevator as well.
Yeah, it's white railing, and I would say that that's probably at least OSHA adjacent approved.
Right. Although it is sort of odd to me that there wouldn't be a gate in the front there, I suppose, and not that the elevator is going to go much higher than where it is, but that gate would be there to stop people from falling into that pit. One would assume there would be another piece of railing to keep people from falling in entirely, but I guess there needs to be a way for people to get out of the elevator. So,
yeah. The important thing to note is that this is a definitely real room, that is absolutely a lab and wasn't just created just for this.
Right.
So those are my major notes on this. Kelly, did you have anything else?
Nope, I've just got callbacks.
Larry, do you have anything else that you want to talk about before callbacks?
I don't think I have anything else that I wanted to talk about before callbacks. I don't know if there's any continuity errors that are leading up to this moment. So
I don't think that you get into zesty continuity errors in this minute, but I do know that there are a couple of fun ones coming up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, the only other thing I wanted to mention was you see the statues with the speakers. So 2 things on that. One, they handed out awards at the convention in Anaheim called the David Awards. So it was a very nice touch where they were giving basically thank yous to people around the community and people around the that helped put on the convention and make it happen. So I don't think I still have my award from that convention, but I got one. I think it was for selling them a jukebox. I honestly can't remember what it was, but they didn't have a jukebox, and I had one of the Rockolas at the time. And Mark Tomeno bought it off of me. And the other thing is, and this is just in regards to the actual movie and the minute that we're looking at here, there's speculation as to maybe those giant statues are actually another race of humanoid creatures that Frank has used his sonic transducer on to make them into statues. I don't know if that's entirely true, but it is an interesting theory if you take the movie at its word that maybe those statues are actually statues just like the statues you see at Floor Show.
I love that. That is not a theory that I've heard before, and I'm incredibly charmed by that. So even if that wasn't what they were going for, I'm going to put that right in my brain and say that's canon. So
there you go. And it's not just those speaker statues. I mean, there's the discus thrower at the top of the pillars in the statue in the laboratory. Perhaps even those pillars are, in fact, some sort of other species, if you really want to get crazy with your theories here.
Yeah, anything that is that white marble or plaster, as the case may be.
Oh, yeah. What about those things that are like outside the elevator, those little Clash of the Titans guys? Maybe those are, in fact, tiny humanoids that were frozen by the sun. Let's get real nuts with this one.
The castle flies. Do we think that the castle is actually sentient? No.
Maybe.
Oh, so it's like a fucking, was it Knight Rider?
Like Kit from Knight Rider.
Yeah. Leandra, if you could please now do your impression of what you think the castle's voice would sound like.
I will not do that.
I think you will.
I will do that one day once we hit 20,000 views on this specific episode.
Okay.
20,000. It's doable.
But if we're good to go into callbacks, I don't have a lot, but I have a few. Oh, well, first I should ask Larry, which ones do you have for this minute?
So a couple of callbacks for this. One, when, the last shot of Riff Raff, the scene here opens with no smiling in this elevator, look the other way, giving direction to Riff Raff as he gets on the elevator. Then the classic, the pineapple-shaped lamps. Look, it's a pineapple-shaped dildo, whatever that line, as that comes across, which varies theater to theater, but basically those are, in fact, pineapple-shaped lamps, or like we said, maybe they're shaped like flame. Frank, is he her husband? The master is not yet married, nor do I think ever will be. So two things. One, you hear, I think it's Janet, someone nervously laughing in this scene. Is Frank, is he her husband? And then you hear that laugh. It sounds just like that laugh that the Pillsbury Doughboy makes when you poke him in the stomach. And then Riff Raff saying, the master is not yet married, nor do I think he ever will be. I always like to yell, that's because you're going to kill him before the end of the... Oh, I ruined it for everybody.
My favorite callback for that specific line is, the master's not yet straight, nor do I think he ever will be straight. We are simply his gay servants. Which I think it's cute. I like things that involve having to have timing.
So speaking of timing, then you have Brad and Janet exiting the elevator is Invisible Man first, Slut second, Stud separate bitch, and then Brad, assholes take it up the rear. Then it shows the crowd of Transylvanians, and this line, unfortunately, has not changed over the years, but I've always heard the we are the world, we are your children. I know that there have been updates for it since then. Not recent enough. That line, of course, we are the world, goes back to the 80s.
Yeah.
So
I still hear that one at every show, and I think it's an oldie but a goodie.
I'm sure. Just, topical. So
yeah, if I polled some of the younger cast members and said, hey, when they say we are the world, we are your children, do you know what that's from? I don't think that I'd get a satisfactory answer.
The more recent line I've heard for that is it's the Spice Girls and they're all scary, which also that's still 30 years old. Like, it's not a recent line, people. And then Brad and Janet see the aforementioned statues of the speakers. Someone yells, "That's a well-hung speaker." It goes over to Frank and Riff Raff. Someone yells, "No, that's a well-hung speaker." And then relatively recently, I heard people yell, "Saddam Hussein is a well-hung speaker." Again,
oh, shit.
While very funny and topical, and I'm sure it was very amusing for a few weeks at the time. How long ago was Saddam Hussein killed? So it's been a bit. It's been a minute. I'm sure there are more recent lines than that.
Yeah, Rocky Horror is the place where references go to live a very long life after their referential.
Right. Again, like you said, I don't know how many people would get that "We Are the World" line, but they're going to yell it every single week. So
people don't know what "We Are the World" is from anymore? It was before my time, but I still.
Yeah, I mean, they know it from that movie, Us. Like
That's true.
I'm sure they know it, but I don't know. Like the idea of lots of people standing in a row was not something that is quite referenced. I'm not sure they quite get that bit. So
I'm interested to see how many people try and force in some pandemic and coronavirus themed callbacks. I'm sure that they'll be very topical for a while.
now that I'm thinking about it, Us wasn't We Are the World. It was Hands Across America was the song, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so then I stand corrected. I have no idea how kids would possibly know what We Are the World is.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm sure there's just that scene. I don't want to jump ahead to your final minute there, but the scene of Frank looking out at the audience after floor show and seeing the empty audience. You could absolutely make a coronavirus joke there.
Yeah, I'm imagining that somebody is going to go 6 feet apart, Transylvanians, or something like that.
Yeah.
And I'll go,
hey, let's start doing some social distancing. Masks and gloves, people. But here we have Riff Raff giving Frank a glass of champagne, and the classic line is "My urine sample master." And then that pretty much ends out the minute as far as lines go, because the next minute is when you can pick up the new set of lines from there.
Well, so that really honestly covered most of the ones I know. Of course, the version of the pineapple one I've heard is first floor, because they're going up the elevator and showing different floors. So it's first floor, pineapple-shaped dildos, dildo-shaped pineapples, and then when right before Janet says, "Is Frank your husband?" It's second floor, stupid questions, then third floor, stupid answers. That's when he responds. And then finally, fourth floor, and you're looking at a black void at the time. So my preference, and again, this is getting a little not so topical anymore either, but my preference is fourth floor, Heath Ledger's Oscar. Don't worry, he didn't see it either. There's also, more commonly, I hear fourth floor, Stevie Wonder's dressing room. Don't worry, he can't see it either. It's fine. And then that's when they enter the lab. Then there's, who's that man all dressed in green? That's not a man, it's a gay Marine.
And then there are two others of that.
Yeah, well, and there's of course it's who's that man all dressed in blue? He's gay.
In the Navy.
He's in the Navy. He's gay too, right?
Yeah.
And then,
but he's not dressed in blue.
I know, I hate that callback for that reason.
That makes sense.
Yelling stuff for the sake of being able to say a line of "oh, someone's gay" is just there's no wit in there, and it seems the joke was already made, so why make it again?
Yeah. And then sound off, Semper Fi, suck 'em dry. So that's what I know for the Frank reveal. And then there's, as you mentioned, the version of the stepping out of the elevator I know is Invisible Men first, Sluts second, Servants in the rear. That's why they're called butlers.
They're still assholes third.
Oh right, of course. I forgot assholes, but
servant's entrance in the rear is later when Riff Raff is going to whip Rocky.
Oh yeah, that makes sense too.
But yeah, so there was one that you reminded me of, and I've already forgotten what it was. It was nope, it's gone.
Oh no.
So when I was first going to the show, I remember Naked Gun was popular, and me and my friend Dave yelled right at that scene when they get out of the elevator and Frank is standing there. We yelled, "Hey, look, it's Enrico Palazzo," which I'm sure when you watched The Naked Gun and got that reference, you were laughing. That line did not stick around, but I do remember yelling. That was, I think, the first line I thought to make up to yell at the show. Didn't stick.
What I find weird about our show specifically is that, and it has to be because we're in DC, political commentary that is kind of lighthearted really works well with our audiences.
Yeah. Although I mentioned in a previous episode, the only time we got like an angry reaction on the dead celebrities, the dead celebrity callback for the skeleton clock reveal was when it was right after George Bush Sr. died, and somebody did a callback about it being his skeleton. There was an audience member that reacted very strongly to that.
I mean, the whole point of it is to have the most recently dead celebrity.
No kidding. And it's like, I don't know why that's the one. I mean, like, every celebrity, beloved, hated, gets sent up that way, you know?
Right.
So those are all of the callbacks I had. Did anybody have anything else before we send Larry off to his death in the woods by Perry Bedden's hands?
No.
No, I have commentary about Perry Bedden.
Oh, do
tell
you?
me more.
Yeah, sure. So he was the first Transylvanian that, like, it was going to conventions and going to shows and all that. Like, you would meet people who did Rocky Horror or who were involved in Rocky Horror. So I met Patricia Quinn, and I met Richard O'Brien at like a show when they did the Rocky Horror show, and it was at the 20th anniversary. I remember meeting Patricia Quinn and Barry Bostwick and Little Nell at the 1998 New York convention. But the idea of someone emailing me, Perry Bedden had gotten in touch with me about putting together a website. I think it was in the early 2000s, or it might have been before 2000. It might have been the late 90s, where he had gotten in touch with me, and I was just so amazed. I was like, "Oh my God, he emailed me to do this," and it was the same thing. Then it grew from that to like Sue Blaine had called me, and then next thing I know, it was Patricia Quinn emailed me, and that's that was the point that I was like, okay, this is very different when they have my phone number instead of me having their phone number. This is strange. But yeah, Perry Bedden was the first person involved in Rocky Horror that I remember had contacted me instead of me contacting him. And now he's going to murder me. So
yeah. So I don't know. I guess it's really just too bad that you don't have a number other than his to call for help. But such is life.
I could call Barry Bostwick. Let me give him a quick call, or Lou Adler. Let's see what they say.
Oh, I don't think that they're going to save you.
No,
I don't think so.
Well, it has been a true delight having you on, though, Larry, and I'm honored that you decided to spend your last moments on Earth here with us.
It's been fun.
But I think that we should wrap this up the same way we wrap up all of our episodes. And this time, Larry, I think you're prepared.
I hope so.
We're gonna say we're gonna say now. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. So get the fuck out.